Hey, folks. Look at this background. We're gonna have to do something about this. Hey, folks. Excuse my lived-in home, but this is where I record. So this is a peek behind the curtain, and it's definitely not what you expected. But excuse the wreck behind me, and maybe through the magic of digital editing, I will be able to remove that. But right now, this is what you're gonna have to deal with. And for those of you who just listen on audio, you guys are all right. Now, as I started digging into the groundwork for this episode, I realized that there's a surprising lack of information about this specific spot. This mysterious gap in knowledge, it really got my wheels turning and it fired up my inner detective, so challenge accepted. So before we dive headfirst into the wild unknown of Mackinac Island, let me give you a quick rundown of the need to know facts and cool little history that you need to know. So, tucked away in the sprawling expanse of Lake Huron, Mackinac Island is the perfect little slice of paradise sandwiched between Michigan's upper and lower peninsulas. It might just be a blip on the map, but let's not let its size fool you. It's packed with charm. According to a 2010 census, this cozy island plays host to just under 500 folks who get to bask in this peaceful vibe all year round. Sure, it may not be the biggest place on the map, but don't let Mackinaw's island size fool you. This little gem is buzzing like a beehive with all sorts of action. We're talking thousands upon thousands of folks flocking in from every corner of the globe, lured in by those killer views that will really just leave you gasping for air. And man, let's talk about history. You've got these age old landmarks scattered around, each one telling its own story from back in the day, like there's some silent storytellers keeping an eye on centuries worth of human hustle and bustle. Plus, this island isn't just about sightseeing, it's a melting pot of cultures. There are loads of events happening all year round that blend different traditions together into one big, beautiful mishmash. It's like being part of a giant family reunion where everyone's invited and you don't want to not show up. Oh, did I mention the fudge? Yeah, fudge. The people here have a serious sweet tooth for Mackinaw's famous fudge. It's so good, it practically became the unofficial mascot of the island. And trust me, once you've had a taste, mwah, you'll understand why you just can't get enough. And you know what's really, really interesting about Mackinac Island? They've straight up said no to cars. It's like stepping into a time machine back when horsepower was, well, actual horses. The place is ruled by horses and bikes, hustling down skinny lanes sandwiched between these cute as a button Victorian homes. Instead of the usual vroom vroom of engines, you've got the steady beat of horseshoes hitting the ground and the ding ding of bike bells. It's really cool. It's a throwback vibe that really just cranks up the charm of this island getaway. Let's take a trip down memory lane, all the way back to a time before Mackinac Island ever saw its first Frenchman. The Ojibwa and Ottawa tribes were the original inhabitants of this land, and they held this place in high regard. To them, it was more than just an island, it was the final resting spot for their dearly departed, a sacred chunk of earth created by Mother Nature herself. They even gave a special name for it. Micheli, I'm not going to attempt to even try and do that, but it translates into great turtle. But as we know, things took a turn when some unwanted guests dropped by. So picture this. It's 1780 and the British Empire is on an expansion spree. They've got their eyes set on Mackinac Island, and they're not taking no for an answer. Bastards. Driven by an unquenchable thirst for power, they seized control of this land from its rightful owners, our Native American friends, without batting an eye. And what did they do next? They went ahead and built a massive fortress right there on the grounds, making sure everyone around knew who the boss was now. So, the clock does what it does. It kept ticking. And bam, 1783 rolled around, a mere 3 years later. And guess who's up next in the rotation? That's right, it's Uncle Sam's time. Mackinac Island became this bustling hub for trade, with the American Fur Company setting up shop right there. Under this new leadership, things were hopping. But the island didn't lose its magic touch. It slowly morphed into a picture-perfect vacation spot. But hold on a second. Peace didn't stick around too long on Mackinac Island. Fast forward to the War of 1812, and deja vu hits like a ton of bricks. The Brits swooped back in and took over what they once called home. But hey, their winning streak didn't last too long either. By 1815, Stars and Stripes were flying high again. This little slice of land has seen its fair share of battles, each one leaving its own unique fingerprint on both the landscape and its people. Now, despite centuries filled with turmoil and shakeups, its importance to Native Americans hasn't faded one bit. Mackinac Island, right? Not just your average military base or sacred native land, but also a vacation hotspot. It's got killer views and history that'll make your head spin. But listen, it's not all postcard perfect sunsets and ice cream cones and fudge. There was a time when this place was straight up creepy town. We're talking witch hunts galore and fear being the daily special. So here's the deal. With each spooky tale that we're going to dive into, it's tangled up with these wild historical happenings. It's like peeling back layers of an onion to reveal the island's crazy, complicated past. And that goes for folks who used to call this place home sweet home. So, this island's a lot like Shrek. So buckle up, folks, because we're going to go down a laundry list of places that call Mackinac Island home. I'm Christopher Feinstein, and this is Haunted American History. Tucked away in the farthest southern corner of Mackinac Island, you'll find a spot that's got quite the reputation: the drowning pool. Now, if you're just strolling by, you might mistake it for your average pond, but don't be fooled. This pool is like an iceberg. What you see on top is nothing compared to what's below. It's not wide, but man, does it go deep. About 20 feet straight down into pitch blackness. Now, here's where things get creepy. Back when people were more scared of shadows than facts, this pool was used for some seriously dark stuff. This was where women who were accused of witchcraft, and yeah, it was always women, faced their trials by water. The first method that they used was something called dunking, which was about far from justice as you can get. They'd rig up a lever over the edge of the pond and tie one end to the accused woman. On the other end, weights that they'd add and remove over and over again. They would dunk this poor lady into the freezing water repeatedly. If she didn't confess to being a witch while getting dunked and eventually drowned, well, hey, then congratulations. She was innocent, but dead. If she did confess under all that pressure, though, well, her future got even grimmer. She'd be hanged. The second method wasn't any less brutal, or random either. They'd bind together the ankles of these accused women and weigh them down with heavy rocks before tossing them into the pool. The logic behind this twisted trial was all superstition. If they floated despite being weighed down, bingo, you got yourself a witch who's defying nature's laws, congratulations. But if they sank like anyone else would, oh well, I guess they were innocent after all, albeit dead. Fast forward to the 1700s and 1800s. 7 women were accused and tried this way. Legend has it that all 7 of them still haunt the drowning pool. Visitors swear that they've seen or heard splashing when there was no one around. Some claim to have spotted figures and shadows both above and below the water's surface. Sometimes these spirits are just blurry shapes. Other times they look more human-like. Sometimes they're floating above the water. Sometimes they're drifting beneath it. But here's the kicker. No matter where these apparitions pop up, there's never a ripple or a wave to show for it. Alright, now let's talk about Mission Point Resort. Now, Mission Point Resort's story kicks off in 1825. Picture this. William and Amanda Ferry, a pair of hardcore Christian missionaries, decided to set up shop out in the wild unknown. They're all about spreading their faith, and they picked this spot for its peace and killer views. They build a home that's going to lay the groundwork for something way bigger than they can imagine. Year after year, this lone house stands tough against time, watching seasons flip by and history happening all around it. Things don't really start shaking up until around 1950, though. This is when a group called the Moral Rearmament gets interested in the place. These guys are sort of an extreme, non-denominational religious movement with a mission to pump up moral values into society through spiritual wake-up calls. Under their watch, this single house starts morphing into a massive complex. The original building transforms into an architectural wonder as more structures pop up, each one rocking its own vibe but still jiving with the OG design, you dig? Fast forward to 1966, I don't know why I said that. Another plot twist hits when it becomes Mackinac College. I just thought it sounded pretty cool. I always wanted to say you dig, you know? Like one of those guys from the 70s guy. Hey, my name's Chris, 70s guy. I should cut this all out, but I'm not gonna. This academic gig only lasts 4 years before closing down in 1970. But it definitely leaves its mark on the place. After playing college campus, the complex scores a new role as a spot for religious programming and retreats. For 2 years, it's like a sanctuary for folks looking for some spiritual peace away from all life's noise. But by 1972, there's yet another switch up at Mission Point Resort. It starts shifting gears from its super religious roots to catering to vacationers. People craving some chill time surrounded by nature, and families wanting to hang out together without the city chaos, you dig? Then, in 1987, the place officially gets named Mission Point Resort. Over time, it goes from being the lone missionary home to a buzzing resort full of vacationers. But even with these changes going on, the resort keeps its original charm and stands as a reminder of its rich and diverse history. Now here's where things start to get weird. Mission Point Resort is the kind of place where everyday stuff often gets tangled up with the downright bizarre. There are all these small, strange little happenings that go on there. Ghostly whispers float around coming from who knows where, but definitely somewhere. It's like there's a creepy soundtrack that messes with those brave enough to tune in. Guests often talk about feeling like they're being watched, like invisible eyes are tracking their every movement. You may be able to brush it off as just paranoia, new places can set off our caveman instincts and make us feel exposed. But there's something about how consistent these reports are that make you think twice. The vibe at Mission Point Resort also has a knack for messing with your senses. There have been times when the air suddenly turns cold for no clear reason. These sudden temperature drops happen out of nowhere. One minute you're soaking in the cozy warmth, then the next you're shivering to the bone. This unexplainable quirk adds another dash of mystery to this already intriguing resort. Mission Point, man, it's got this otherworldly vibe that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. The place is famous for its ghost kids, most of all. Now, word around town is back in the early 1800s, a nasty bout of tuberculosis hit Mission Point, and the ones who got hit the hardest were the poor kiddos. They got stashed away in this dank basement. Their tiny bodies just couldn't handle the brutal attack of this sickness. Most didn't make it out of those chilly stone walls alive. Now, I've done my homework on this one, but I couldn't find any solid proof or backup from records of that time that confirms this story. But hey, the local folks still believe it, and they share it as a creepy reminder of what may have happened, so who am I to say anything different? Within these ghostly sightings, there's one spirit we know by name, Lucy. Her story gets tangled up with Mission Point's past in such a mysterious way. When exactly she lived there is anyone's guess. Apparently, her parents had to rush back to Detroit for some urgent business stuff, leaving sickly Lucy behind at Mission Point under someone else's care. Sadly, things didn't go as planned for little Lucy. She lost her fight against whatever was making her sick before her parents could return back to her. Now, people say her unsettled spirit roams around Mission Point's corridors and rooms, forever looking for comfort in the arms of her long-gone parents, through her heart-wrenching cries that echo down the halls. Then we have the one who's known as Harvey. He's what you would call Mission Point Resort's celebrity ghost. This guy was once a student at Mackinac College during its short-lived heyday, somewhere between 1966 and 1970. Poor Harvey was stuck in a love triangle where his feelings weren't returned. Aww. His girlfriend dumped him, which left him totally crushed and devastated. He went into the woods near campus looking for some peace, but ended up ending his own life. His body wasn't found until much later, Some say it was a few months, while other stories say it could have been close to a year before his body was discovered. Even though the official cause of death was something that rhymes with schmooishmide, students started gossiping about something far more sinister. Whispers started going around that 2 bullets were found in Harvey's skull when they finally stumbled upon his decomposed body in the woods. This got people thinking murder instead of schmooishmide, adding an extra layer of mystery and sadness to Harvey's tale. These days, people say Harvey's unsettled spirit has made Mission Point Resort's theater its forever home. Visitors often talk about these weird encounters, feeling unseen hands poking and nudging them, as if trying to get their attention, or maybe tell a story from the other side. What story do you think Harvey's trying to tell? Well, maybe the one of who killed him. Hey friends, I just wanted to stop here in the middle to give my usual spiel of thank yous and, with the holiday season coming upon us, I want to wish everybody happy holidays. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. If you celebrated, if not, I hope you had a really great Thursday. I just wanted to thank everybody who's been reaching out and sending emails and suggestions of places to visit state by state, and just generally the nice things that people have been sending me. I've gotten a couple of voicemails lately that reminds me I haven't responded to, which I have to. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Some of the reviews are good. I got a review the other day that was a little strange on Apple. Someone told me, give me a 1-star review. I don't, doesn't matter. Well, I don't care. But it was like politics and hauntings don't mix, which I don't think I'm ever political in anything that I talk about, unless they're talking about maybe an ad that I ran, but I don't know what ads ran. I'm on a network and, they choose the ads. And so I think I've opted out of all political ads, but I don't know what they could be referring to, that politics and hauntings don't mix. I mean, I don't really talk about politics. I talk about, what happened, historical things. If you take that as a political statement, me just saying what happened, I guess, okay. I mean, different stripes for everybody, I guess. Anyway, yeah, and they were also asked if are you reading off a teleprompter? Yeah, I am. I have a script that I write, and I'm very open about my script that I write and read off of, because when I go off the cuff, this is what I sound like. So yes, I am doing that. Thank you. You're very observant. Or you're not very observant. Either way, thanks for the downloads. Anyway, thank you all so much. I appreciate every one of you, the kind ones, even the negative ones. I appreciate you. And one day I hope you appreciate yourself. So thank you. The end of the year is coming up. I know usually I slow down kind of a bit at the end of the year, which I'm going to try not to. I'm also going to try to do this video stuff more often. This is the future of podcasting, they say, and I'm trying to find my foothold. So anyway, thank you all so much. I love each and every one of you from the bottom of this gooey center. Thank you. Later, folks. Let's keep going. Mackinac Island. Later. And Mission Point isn't the only hotel on the island. Well, I should preface that there are a lot of hotels on the island, but not all of them have paranormal encounters to report of. But this other one does. The Grand Hotel. Built back in 1887, it's got a serious old school vibe. Some history buffs around town swear up and down that this place was plopped right on top of an ancient graveyard. Whoa. The story goes that they tried to move all the bodies first, but there was just too damn many of them, and they had to give up and build over it instead. Listen, I've seen Poltergeist. I know exactly how this story ends. Now, I haven't found any solid proof from when this hotel was built to back this up, so it could really just be a local gossip getting out of hand, like most folklore is. Or maybe not. There's a theory that might explain why the Grand Hotel is basically ghost central. Now, could it be that all these sightings are because of those forgotten bodies under the foundation? Yeah, that's obvious, Chris. But it still doesn't make it any less of a creepy thought. These spirits were maybe woken up, and now they're stuck wandering around this grand old building. The Grand Hotel has turned into a hotspot for ghost sightings. So many that you really can't keep track of them all. Over the years, guests and staff have reported seeing all sorts of ghosts, dressed like they're straight out of the 19th century. One spirit everyone seems to know is known as Little Rebecca. Poor kid died young at the hotel, but her ghost has made itself home in the place. You can usually spot her up on the 4th floor, where everything gets real quiet after dark. From the old school wallpapered halls to rooms filled with antique furniture, it's like Rebecca's personal playground. She wanders around, leaving nothing but soft footsteps behind before disappearing without warning. People who've seen her say that they felt a cold shiver right before catching sightings of her vanishing act. Most of these run-ins with Rebecca happen between 2 and 4 a.m., known as the witching hour. And she doesn't show herself to groups or couples. No siree. Only lone wanderers get a glimpse of Rebecca, of course. So while we may never get the full scoop on the ghostly goings-on at the Grand Hotel, one thing's for sure. Its former residents are still hanging around, giving us plenty to talk about and a good reason to sleep with one eye open. Let me tell you about this one ghost that has really got my gears turning. She's known as the Woman in Black. You can usually catch a glimpse of her after sundown, when the day's turned off its lights and everything's are just shadows and whispers. And what's her favorite hangout? The porch of the Grand Hotel. Under the moonlight, she sashays around the big old veranda like she owns the place, her dark figure standing out against all the fancy architecture. But here's where it gets a little strange. She's not alone. She has a big white dog that tags along with her. Now, I've heard plenty of ghost stories about dogs in my time. I've even talked about a few. Just recently, I talked about the big blue dog. But white dogs? That's new to me. Usually you hear about black dogs, and they usually mean bad omens or something like that. The white one makes you wonder if they were perhaps best friends in life and decided to stick together even after death. That's something. That kind of warms your heart. You'd hope that you'd run into your four-legged friend after you pass, and you reunite, and now you just haunt an old Victorian porch together. That's the greatest story ever. That's the best ending that could ever possibly happen for anyone's life. Now, their appearance have got me thinking about all sorts of things, like death, life, and what comes next. Can animals experience an afterlife too? This lady in black and her ghost dog are more than just your average haunting. They make me question what we think about life and what we know about existence itself. Now, hold on to your hats, because I've saved the scariest one for last. Deep within the ornate corridors of the Grand Hotel lurks something truly terrifying. A bunch of guests and staff have had run-ins with this creepy apparition. A shadowy mass with 2 glowing red eyes that look like burning coals. From what I've gathered, this thing doesn't fit into our usual idea of ghosts. It doesn't have a clear human form, no arms, no legs, but instead it looks more like a shadow or a cloud that is attempting to be human-shaped. And it gives off some seriously bad feelings too. People talk about feeling pure evil when they come across it, and this thing isn't just for show. It's been known to get physical. One time, a poor maintenance man reported that he got knocked out cold by something he couldn't even see. Now, could it have been one of his co-workers whose lunch he stole, and the guy decided to give him a nap? I don't know. But this creepy shadow thing seems to love hanging out in the hotel's theater. Another theater ghost. Especially near the stage where all those velvet curtains and dim lights and just extra things to be creepy around. It's like it feeds off the drama or something, or it just likes putting on twisted shows. So if you ever find yourself at the Grand Hotel, watch your step in that part of the building. Now, built smack dab in the middle of the Revolutionary War, Fort Mackinac was cleverly placed right on an island. Remember, we chatted about this one before. Its spot made it a serious game changer in the war, with its bird's eye view of the nearby waters giving it one heck of an advantage for defense and keeping an eye out. The fort itself is a massive maze of 14 different buildings, each with its own job to do. You've got your soldiers' quarters, simple but cozy homes that once buzzed with kids' laughter and whispered chats between husbands and wives. Then there's the barracks, standing tall with their wooden frames filled with tidy rows of beds where soldiers could crash after a hard day's work, or even a battle. And we can't forget about the storehouses scattered around. Their walls protecting everything necessary for life inside the fort, from grub to guns. A hospital stands quiet and dignified, its hallways echoing countless stories of suffering and grit. And a bathhouse offers a spot for soldiers to wash off all that dirt and stress from their duties. There's even a cute little schoolhouse tucked away within the fort. Here, the kiddies would huddle around wooden desks under watchful eyes, soaking up lessons that went just beyond book learning. They were there getting schooled in toughness, friendship, and love for their country. In short, Fort Mackinac wasn't just some military base, it was like its own mini town where you could find everything you needed for daily life hidden behind those fortified walls. Now, despite time doing its thing, Fort Mackinac has pretty much stayed the same since its glory days in the 19th century. It's still standing strong as a piece of history, neither giving into modern times nor rotting away into nothingness. Its buildings keep their original style and charm. The ghostly going-ons at the grand old Fort Mackinac vary in intensity, with the amount of spooky activity changing from one ancient building to another within its extensive compound. But there's always this subtle vibe of paranormal stuff going on that seems to seep into every weathered building and cobblestone path across this historic fort. Visitors, whether they're skeptics or believers, often get an earful of unexplainable sounds during their tour around the fort. The ghostly tunes of a fife often drift through the air, a phantom melody that seems to just come out of thin air. Despite a good look around for who's playing it, no one can ever find anything, leaving guests with an eerie feeling of an invisible musician playing songs from way back when. Just as weird, the sudden bang of rifle shots ring out around the fort at random times. These ghostly gunshots are heard even on days when there's no historical reenactments or any gun-related activities going on. The unexplained and unexpected noise leaves visitors jumping and looking around in confusion for soldiers who aren't there practicing their shooting skills. Odd stuff also pops up in photos taken by tourists at Fort Mackinac. Orbs, balls of light that some think are spirits, show up often in these pictures. These strange things aren't just found in indoor photos where dust might catch a flash. They appear even in outdoor shots where that explanation doesn't really hold up. Plus, these orbs don't look like bugs that sometimes end up in pictures. Insects usually just look like themselves or just blurs when they're caught on camera. Instead, these glowing orbs keep showing up in photos taken all over inside the fort. The old hospital tucked within the stone walls of Fort Mackinac has been a hotbed for some seriously creepy ghostly activity. A whole bunch of folks have come out of there with their faces as white as sheets, spinning tales about seeing ghostly arms and legs just floating around. And we're not talking about blurry shapes here, we're talking about just full-on spectral limbs, like hands reaching out to touch nothing and feet just stepping on empty air. These phantom parts don't seem to be attached to any sort of body or figure, which makes this even more bizarre. This isn't your regular haunting where ghosts are reliving their past lives or traumas. No. These limbs are floating around solo, drifting eerily in the cold hospital air. But that's not all. People have also reported feeling super emotional in there, like they've walked into a cloud of pure sadness that sticks to them like glue. So here's what I'm thinking. Maybe all that bad stuff that happened in this hospital has now somehow soaked into the building itself. Like a record player stuck on repeat, or a skipping CD, or a MP. Do MP3s skip? Why would I say record player? Oh, odds are, not like record players are. What's this record you're talking about, Chris? People know what records are, Chris. It's not like it's a weird thing. Anyway, things are skipping. I don't know. To dig deeper into this idea of how places might hold on to past emotions or events, you might want to look up something called the stone tape theory. It's a wild concept that suggests mental impressions from emotional or traumatic events can be stored in rocks and other kinds of items. Kind of like turning them into tapes playing back certain happenings or feelings under specific conditions. Now let's talk about the guardhouse and the barracks, both made from solid gray stone. These places seem to be buzzing with unexplainable stuff too. One thing people report a lot is hearing children crying in the echoey way that sends chills down your spine. It doesn't sound normal, it sounds otherworldly. And every night, toys are put away neatly, but each morning, it's like a tornado has torn through the place, leaving toys thrown all over the place. It's like these ghost kids are having a midnight play party. And don't get me started on the motion detectors that they have at these places. They keep going off at weird times and for no reason. Maybe these invisible ghost kids are coming out playing in front of the motion detectors. And that's what's setting it off. Oh, and then there's the furniture that seems to have a life of its own. Chairs move around overnight. Tables are found wandered completely across rooms. And wardrobes creep closer to the doors, blocking them from opening. It's like you're living in a haunted IKEA. I've got a hunch that these ghosts missed out on their calling as some sort of creepy interior decorator. Now they're making up for lost time by moving all the stuff around according to whatever was trendy during their time. One day it's Rococo, and the other day it's Victorian Gothic. But hey, listen, if I wake up one day and my house is done up mid-century modern, I think I might just leave them a thank you note. Anyway, folks, thank you so much. This has been Mackinac Island, and I'm Christopher Feinstein, and this is Haunted American History.